Most people believe they think for themselves. They believe their opinions are their own. Their conclusions are their own. Their beliefs are the result of careful thought. But in many cases, what people call thinking is actually repetition. They inherit assumptions, absorb headlines, echo group opinions, react emotionally, and then call the result truth. Critical thinking begins the moment you stop asking, "What am I supposed to believe?" and start asking, "How do I know this is true?" Because critical thinking is not about sounding intelligent, it is about seeing clearly. And in a world full of noise, persuasion, ideology, outrage, and manipulation, the ability to think clearly is a form of power. Hello and welcome to the Sovereign Frequency channel. I'm glad you're here. In this video, we're going step by step through how to master critical thinking. Not in an academic way, not in a dry, robotic way, but in a way that helps you move through life with more clarity, better judgment, and greater independence of mind. Because critical thinking is not just an intellectual skill, it is one of the foundations of sovereignty. Let's start with the foundation. Critical thinking does not mean being cynical. It does not mean arguing with everything, and it does not mean automatically distrusting everyone. Critical thinking means examining ideas carefully instead of passively absorbing them. It means slowing down long enough to look beneath appearances. A critical thinker does not simply ask, "Do I like this idea?" A critical thinker asks, "Is it true? What is the evidence? What assumptions are built into it? What might be missing? What would challenge this conclusion?" That is the shift. Critical thinking is disciplined, honest evaluation. It is the ability to separate emotional reaction from careful judgment. And if you want to master it, you have to stop treating thought as something automatic. Because most people do not think nearly as much as they react. The next step is learning to notice assumptions. Assumptions are the hidden ideas sitting underneath what people say, including what you say. Every opinion rests on something deeper. For example, if someone says, "Success means having status and money," there is an assumption underneath that. If someone says, "You should trust experts no matter what," there is an assumption underneath that. If someone says, "This is just the way the world works," there is almost always an assumption underneath that too. Critical thinkers train themselves to ask, "What is being taken for granted here?" That question alone can change your life, because once you become aware of assumptions, you start seeing how much human thought is built on ideas that were never truly examined, and that includes your own worldview. This is where real growth begins, not when you attack other people's blind spots, when you become honest enough to see your own. Critical thinking is driven by questions, and the quality of your thinking depends heavily on the quality of the questions you ask. Weak thinkers ask, "Do I agree with this? Does this sound right? Do people I trust believe it?" Strong thinkers ask better questions. What exactly is being claimed? What evidence supports it? What evidence weakens it? Are there other explanations? What is the source? What is the incentive behind this message? What would prove this false? That last question matters a lot, because if nothing could ever disprove an idea, then you may not be dealing with truth. You may be dealing with ideology, identity, or emotional attachment. A big part of critical thinking mastery is replacing instant judgment with deliberate inquiry. Instead of rushing towards certainty, you become someone who can stay with the question long enough to actually understand what you're looking at. And honestly, most people hate that stage. They want closure fast. But clarity usually comes to the person who is willing to question longer than everyone else. This is where a lot of people fail. They confuse confidence with truth. They confuse popularity with truth. And they confuse strong opinion with evidence. But evidence is not the same as assertion. A person saying something loudly does not make it real. 1,000 people repeating it does not make it real. A polished presentation does not make it real. Critical thinking asks, what supports this claim in reality? That might mean data, first-hand verification, reliable sources, consistent results, logical coherence, or multiple forms of evidence pointing in the same direction. And just as important, you need to learn the difference between good evidence and weak evidence. Anecdotes can be emotionally powerful but limited. Statistics can be useful but also manipulated. Experts can be informed but still biased. Personal experience matters, but it is not always the full picture. The mature thinker does not worship evidence blindly either. They weigh it. They compare it. They ask whether the evidence actually supports the conclusion being sold. That is a huge difference. Because people often present evidence for one thing and then jump to conclusions that evidence does not actually justify. If you want to master critical thinking, you need to know the traps. Because the mind has patterns, and many of those patterns distort judgment. Here are a few big ones. Confirmation bias, noticing what supports your existing belief and ignoring what challenges it. Emotional reasoning, assuming something is true because it feels true. Straw man thinking, reducing another person's argument into a weaker version so it is easier to attack. Black and white thinking, acting as if there are only two extreme options when reality is often more nuanced. Appeal to authority, assuming a claim is true simply because an authority figure said it. Groupthink, adopting the dominant view because social belonging feels safer than independent thought. The point is not to memorize jargon. The point is to become more aware of how easily the mind can be pulled off course. A person who does not know these traps is far more likely to become trapped by them. A person who does know them begins to catch themselves in real time, and that is powerful. Because critical thinking is not just about spotting flaws in other people's reasoning, it is about becoming less easily deceived by your own. Now, let's make this practical. One of the best ways to think more clearly is to use a simple structure. When you face a claim, situation, or decision, walk through it like this. First, what is the claim? Define it clearly. Second, what are the reasons being given? Strip away the emotion and identify the actual argument. Third, what evidence supports those reasons? Not assumptions, not vibes, evidence. Fourth, what alternative explanations exist? What else could be true? Fifth, what conclusion is most justified by the available information? This matters because unstructured thinking becomes messy fast. People jump from feeling to conclusion to certainty in seconds. But structured reasoning slows the mind down. It creates order. It helps you move from reaction to evaluation. And that is one of the great hidden powers of critical thinking. It introduces discipline into the act of forming a belief. Not every question has a perfect answer, but structured reasoning helps you arrive at a more honest one. This step is essential. Because without humility, critical thinking becomes arrogance in disguise. Intellectual humility means recognizing that you can be wrong. It means being willing to update your view when better evidence appears. It means caring more about truth than about protecting your ego. A lot of people want the appearance of being thoughtful. Far fewer want the discomfort of being corrected. But real thinkers understand something important. Changing your mind when the evidence warrants it is not weakness. It is maturity. It is strength. It is integrity. The ego wants certainty. The mature mind wants truth. And sometimes the most intelligent sentence you can say is, "I may be wrong," or "I need to look into that more," or "That's a good point, I hadn't considered it that way." That is not insecurity, that is intellectual sovereignty. Because once your identity is no longer fused to being right, your mind becomes much freer to actually learn. Finally, if you want critical thinking to become part of your life, you have to model it. You have to live it out. That means speaking carefully, avoiding exaggeration, representing opposing views fairly, checking your own assumptions, admitting uncertainty when uncertainty is real. It also means showing people what thoughtful judgment looks like, not performative skepticism, not constant contrarianism, not cynical detachment, but calm, disciplined, reality-based thinking. When someone makes a claim, slow it down. When you hear a narrative, examine it. When you feel emotionally triggered, pause before turning that feeling into a conclusion. And above all, apply the same standard to your own beliefs that you apply to the beliefs of others. Because that is where credibility comes from. Not from sounding sharp, from being honest. Critical thinking is not a talent that a few lucky people are born with. It is a discipline, a way of approaching reality, a way of refusing to hand your mind over to noise, pressure, appearance, or persuasion. It begins with understanding what critical thinking really is, then noticing assumptions, asking better questions, evaluating evidence, recognizing thinking errors, using structure, practicing humility, and modeling the standard yourself. Step by step, that is how a person becomes harder to manipulate, harder to mislead, harder to emotionally steer. And in a world crowded with influence, that matters. Because the ability to think clearly is not just useful, it is liberating. It is one of the clearest expressions of inner authority, and it may be one of the most important skills you ever build. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the Sovereign Frequency channel. This channel is for those who want to think clearly, live consciously, and reclaim authority over their own minds. And remember, a sovereign life begins with a mind that knows how to question. I'll see you in the next transmission.